Did Ambedkar save Buddhism, or did he change it so much it became something else? For some Buddhists, Navayana isn't really Buddhism at all. For others, it's the most authentic form we have. And this is a key area of debate within Buddhist thinking. So let's look at why that might be. He changed things. That's no doubt about that. He made it less about the metaphysical and the supernatural and faith and more about the rational and the reasonable. He changed it from being focused on mental suffering and personal suffering to be about political suffering, suffering caused by the injustices in the world. So there's a real shift in emphasis. But concretely, what did he change? Well, some core doctrines, actually. He rejected the idea of reincarnation completely. He talked instead about rebirth, but what he meant by that was just the scientific observation that energy isn't destroyed, it simply moves or changes its form. And so he just took those ideas and reinterpreted them for the modern day. And karma, he kept the word karma, but changed the emphasis of that. It's not about explaining why we move from one reincarnation to another, but rather karma was simply about cause and effect, about our observations, about that as an ethical principle, that what we do has effects in the world, which is within Buddhism, but he just re-emphasizes that, really. And while there are some forms of Buddhism that have the idea of celestial beings or have the idea of something much more soul-like, going from reincarnation to reincarnation, he rejects all of those ideas and much of the ritual practice and priestly practice of Buddhism too. And so this is where the real disagreement begins. Because if he changed so much about Buddhism, if he took away some of the core beliefs and the core practices of Buddhism, but kept the word Buddhism, is it really Buddhism at all? Has he just kept the name because it's useful for him, but what he's created is a political, social movement dressed up as a religious practice? That's a genuine question that is well meant and well intentioned, and many Buddhists quite rightly ask. So let's address that. So first, looking back then, we can see over roughly 2,500 years, Buddhism has always changed and evolved. Every Buddhist tradition we see now is one that has developed and changed over time. It's not like anybody has some pure form of Buddhism from the very first community that surrounded the Buddha. And so if Buddhism has always developed, why not develop as Navayana Buddhism? Why can't that be authentic? The other argument reaches back to say, well, actually, the Buddha was deeply skeptical of metaphysical arguments. Any questions about whether God exists or not, for example, he would say, well, no one can ever know, so why are we even asking the question? Let's focus on questions that we can answer and questions that are about alleviating suffering in our lives and in the world, rather than questions that we can't answer and don't address that key question. How do we reduce suffering? So in many ways, what Ambedkar did was he brought us back to the original message of the Buddha, which is question everything, including the Buddha, and allow our ideas to change and evolve as we get new information, as we observe and discover new things. So in that sense, it could be thought of as the most authentic form of Buddhism we've ever had, one which sits lightly to the very idea of Buddhism or to the idea of religion. And here comes to another really important idea that Ambedkar brought to the table. He talked about rejecting religion altogether, but what he really meant, and he was explicit about this, was the religion of rules. Ambedkar said we need a religion of principles rather than a religion of rules. And that's what Navayana Buddhism aims to be. It's not about ritual rules. It's not about rules about what you believe. It's simply a space within which we can train ourselves in ethical principles to live our lives and reduce suffering for ourselves and, crucially, for others. And that those two things are not separate. So that as we go out into the world and try and reduce suffering in the world, we discover more about ourselves, that we are mindful in the world. So the real question then is not so much, is Navayana Buddhism Buddhism at all, but rather, what is Buddhism really for?